Hey everyone, greetings surviving humans. This isn't the best place to choose, is it? Well, I don't want to get the light in the actual video itself, and I don't know why this stupid thing is here, but I'm not going to untie it because it's not mine. So this is a trans refugee update, and there's some good news, and there's some bad news, and there's thoughts and feelings, and I hope that I don't become too rambly. The first thing I'd like to discuss is how I've noticed I relate to some people who have escaped from cults in the sense of high control groups. And I won't name those groups because maybe the Amish won't sue me. A certain cult of greed and avarice would probably sue to harass me not to win. Anyway, so regardless if I'm speaking about somebody that was escaped a high control group, I can still speak about the things that matter. So one person who escaping from a high control group recalled how, well, after he was extracted and his vehicle was leaving, he thought to himself how he expected to look back and expected that he would already start missing things and already feel a little bit wistful about his former home. Like he'd want to look back and reflect a little bit. Except he didn't want to, he didn't care, he didn't miss them, and he felt a little weird, he felt a little guilty for not at least looking back at the house and thinking that he at least had fond memories in the house. He at least had, looking back and at least missing some aspects of his family. Well, he didn't, and he didn't. And it's funny because when I heard him discussing this, I'm like, that was me. I thought I'd look back, I thought I would take one last look at my house. Similar to when I was a child and we moved around so much, I might take a last look at my house, say in Indiana when we were moving to Georgia. And I've lived all over the country, and I've lived in 2 states twice. So, but I distinctly remember doing the same thing. I thought I'd look back to see the house. I thought I would be a little bit sad that I had to leave, and I thought I'd miss my family a little bit. I didn't, and I didn't. And I feel a little weird, and I felt a little bit guilty because I don't miss my family of origin. I don't miss the house. Sometimes I miss some of my stuff. There's been a couple of times where I've missed my books. I have my video eye so I can get new books and I can read for when they're not audiobooks. But there's books that I miss. Dice. I've been in several occasions where I simply miss my dice collection. I can collect a new dice if I want to. I'm missing it now. I really love dice. But anyway, moving swiftly on. Yeah, I have dice every color of the rainbow. Glittery, the speckled, the nebula dice. There's a lot of solid colors of dice, every color of the rainbow. I didn't ever get any metal dice, but yeah, I have like several shades of pink dice. I have one set of orange dice that I like, but I was always like, I'm gonna get a couple more shades of orange. I have gobs of blue dice because I love blue. If I just sit here and say I have black dice, I have gray dice, I have yellow dice, I have purple dice, I have green dice, I have this and this and this. I have a lot of, green dice is another color I like. And I have some red dice, and one pair of dice I loved they were red, but they had bright orange numbers, and I had this more subdued speckled red that I really liked. They had gray numbers, but they were light gray, so I could read them. And I miss my dice a lot. I don't miss my family of origin. Another thing that I heard from a person who escaped, or I've heard this from many people who have escaped high control groups over the years. In their high control group, they were always warned that the outside world, the real world, whatever you want to call it, maybe the log world, but whatever you want to call it, they're always warned, oh, it's such a bad place, it's such a terrible place, it's awful, people are mean, people are nasty. And then they get outside in the real world, and people are actually pretty darn nice. Not everyone, sometimes people are jerks, but basically people are nice. And I was never totally under the impression, I was pretty cynical to a degree, but I was never really under the impression that I'm super lucky to be in this family and the world outside is mean, altogether mean. But the meanness of my family fed into a cynical view of humanity in general. And the cats are up to something, because of course they are. And over there's the cat that generally does not get involved in things, getting involved in a thing, and he never comes in here, and now he's coming in here, and you know where your food is, and said he's having his food, and this cat is paying attention here. So I'm literally standing in the middle of three cats, and I there we go, he's off to go find his food, so he's okay. Now that he's not going to be grumpy with these cats, everything's fine. But if I started trying to show you cats, this room is a bit cramped, so I might knock shit over. That's why I'm not showing cats on the internet. I know, horrible. When I was growing up, now I never really believed these, but when I was growing up, my mother would tell me stories about how other parents are bad, and that I was lucky to have such good parents. Now, when I was a young child, it didn't strike me as weird because I didn't have anything to compare it to. But when I was a teenager, especially since I had accessed the internet from 95 on, but when I was a teenager, having been exposed to sitcoms, which it's not reality, but it's closer to reality than my family, and just having been exposed to other people and being at friends' houses and the like, I knew that there was something really wrong and something really nasty about a figure who is in a position of authority telling me, you're lucky. Sometimes there are parents who do this, and there are parents who do this, and you come from a good family. And this repeated, you come from a good family. You come from a good family. Like, if sometimes it would be, I saw a news story about this. You're lucky you come from a good family. It was it might be an example of horrific abuse inflicted upon a child, or it might be an example of a religious cult. It might be an example of a tyrannical government that regularly does some awful thing to its citizens, like spy on their every move. You're lucky you're lucky you have privacy, even though I didn't really have much privacy, but blah, 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 blah. You come from a good family. You're lucky to have us. Your parents are good parents, and you're lucky to have good parents. Most parents aren't as good as us. Like, if you have to affirm that and if you have to repeat it, you might be the baddies. So you quote a present day internet meme. Are we the baddies? Yeah, you're probably the baddies. It's kind of like if you find yourself in a political philosophy or a religion or something like that that says, we have the truth, we know what's really going on, the outside world isn't awake, they're drones, they're zombies, they're sinful, they're not, maybe even if they're saying they're mundane or they're profane, as in sacred and profane, or as in like magical and full of wonder and curiosity versus ho-hum, very mundane, closed-minded, right? I mean, be careful of that, because there's probably a problem. If somebody has to keep affirming that, it's kind of like how the most authoritarian people are the most seemingly patriotic. Not genuinely patriotic, but nationalistic. The most authoritarian types are the most nationalistic types. Soviet propaganda. And yes, here I'm talking about the radical right, the extreme right, whatever you would call them, but in the Soviet Union, their propaganda would be like, well, you're lucky to live in the Soviet Union. Here we have schools opening up every year, and over in the United States, the capitalist West, their schools are closing every day. In fact, I'm paraphrasing a piece of Soviet propaganda, a translation of it, because I have a fascination for this sort of stuff. Kind of like Jordan Peterson, but I'm not a liar, and I'm not a person who ought to know not to judge people who have addictions, and then judges people who has addictions, and then find out that I have an addiction, and then go to Russia to go into a comatose state in order to be detoxed. And yeah. But I kind of get being fascinated with really dark settings within human history. I love history in general. I've always been rather fascinated with the Cold War and different aspects of it. Just like a couple nights ago, I was listening to 1950s Cold War era music. You may have heard the song Atomic Cocktail. That's an example of it that everyone's familiar with. But, I get into like some weird anti-communist or just some weird stuff. I heard some Jamaican singer, I wish I remembered her name, singing about like, oh hey, if you want to stay, if you're rather partial to being alive, you don't want to split the atom. Was basically the point of the song. And it was a very happy, upbeat song, but it was kind of like, hey, don't do this. So, yeah, so I'm noticing, like, again, I was never convinced, because I went to public school, fortunately, and even though I may have gotten better educated at a private school, I may have very much gotten poorly educated at a private school, depending on the private school. Because some private schools are like, sure, you got to take a class in theology, and gosh darn it, it stinks, especially if you're not inclined to believe in things that you cannot verify and all this stuff. But also outside of that, the education's better. You're still learning about evolution in science class, and maybe in English class you're still reading Paradise Lost or Dante's Inferno. They're not going to shy away from controversial stuff because religion or whatever, but so many private schools in the States are parochial religious, right? So maybe you got to take a class in theology, or you have to takes, some class about church history or something. It even knows you can, even if you are an atheist and you don't believe in any of it, it's all bollocks, you can still benefit from those classes because you're understanding the arguments of your interlocutors if you are inclined to debate. And I would like to see more online atheists take that approach. Like, okay, I'm gonna understand what my interlocutor over here well and truly believes, then I'm gonna poke holes in it. I'm not just gonna sit here and just approach all theists as believing in one God and one idea of one God, and all creationists and all young earth creationists and all believing for the same bad reasons. Yeah, moving on. Okay, so moving on. Actually, that's probably a really good segue. I've been feeling lots and lots of emotions, but also I've been feeling no emotions, just depending on when it is. I have phrased it like this: I'm either Science Officer Spock, or I am Lieutenant Worf launching into Klingon opera. I seem to be really emotional, sometimes even at inappropriate times, or not emotional at all. And it's frustrating because it's not like something happens that's a little bit frustrating, I get proportionally frustrated, and then the frustration goes away and I go about my day. Something happens that's frustrating, I don't feel frustrated at all, and it's really fucking weird. Like, there's nothing. Like I'm a robot. And I go about my merry day. But I'm kind of weirded out because I'm a fucking robot when I know this thing would have frustrated me. And then later on the same day, I might eat a good meal. Or I might be in Walgreens and I see a particular product. Or I'm waiting in line, maybe I smell something or hear a song or whatever, and I remember something really small, and I start crying a little bit, and I have to take deep breaths so I don't break down crying in public over something really, really tiny, like, well, actually, I've had this thought, like, I am so happy my family isn't here. Or I'm so happy my mother isn't here. But I swear to this day, if I hear the song "Come All Ye Faithful," I'm gonna get real sentimental and I'm gonna cry. If I hear "God Rest You Merry Gentlemen," I'm gonna get real sentimental and I'm gonna cry. So the winter holidays, when they come around this year, I always find them hard anyway. I'm gonna be a mess this year. And it's very frustrating because my emotions aren't, I'm a bit nostalgic, I'm a bit sad, I'm a bit relieved. Like, I'm glad my mother isn't here to criticize me for buying a pen, because I lost another pen. I'm glad she's not here to give me a lecture about how I don't care about anything and how I don't just take the time to find the other pen, and that I'm bad for misplacing it and whatever else, and making up shit I never did, and I don't know. It's doing weird, nasty crap that you can hear about in videos about sociopaths, right? And I've been having nightmares. And I'm kind of happy that I've been having nightmares, because it means that now I can feel things. I'm feeling shit like a human. However, but they are nightmares, and so I might have a dream that I have to go back home for whatever reason. Like one time I had a dream that my family had hired the Chinese government to track me down. I remember there was a dream that may have been the same dream where I was stuck in some sort of prison that was under the guise of like mental health care, which I had an experience like that in a way, which is probably why I had the dream. But I was in a facility like that because the anti-trans laws had gotten worse, and I was in the middle of middle America, and I'd been found and caught. And there's been other nightmares I've had, like nightmares about my family harassing me or finding me and just showing up randomly. And yes, it's normal, but still, and it's good because I can finally just feel feelings like a human, like a person, but also they're nightmares. And I'm also, I've been having very frequently, when I'm doing something pleasurable or just doing something normal like folding laundry or doing dishes or getting ready for bed, I feel like a couple days ago in the shower, I feel like I'm gonna wake up. I don't feel real. It's probably like I'm dissociated somewhat. I don't feel real. I don't feel like this is real life. I don't feel like I've voluntarily escaped. And I feel like I'm gonna wake up and be in my room with my cat on my bed, probably leaning over, looking at the large numbers on my clock, and it's going to be like 10 something or 11 something in the morning, and I'm going to stay in bed until 2 or 3, or because I'm going to be hiding from a screaming match downstairs, because they happen on a daily basis. My mother and my brother would have the weird screaming matches over which anti-trans theory is the truest, or what the Democrats' real agenda is, or whatever, or whether or not whether or not the big worldwide globalist conspiracy is actually going to manage to jail Trump, because Trump is actually president, because they're election deniers and insurrection deniers and a whole bunch of other shit. And they're screaming and raging at each other. And sometimes they're screaming and raging about, me, whether it's directly, but usually it's indirectly, because it's a screaming match about transgender people, except it's not like one is anti-trans and one is pro-trans. It's like one is anti-trans and one is anti-trans. And it's more along the lines of arguing about what the trans agenda is. And I'm going to, my fear is I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to hear this for the 4 billionth time, and I'm going to, again, for the 4 billionth time, stay upstairs and hide from it and contemplate suicide again, because that is my life, and that's what I have to look forward to day after day after day after day. Constantly being misgendered, constantly being dead named, constantly being belittled, criticized, manipulated, talked down to, yelled at, raged at, sometimes for stuff that happened that's completely disproportional, or that are completely understandable, like, sorry I didn't have time to do this thing, or sorry I didn't know that it even I didn't know this or that needed to be fixed or cleaned or done, or you know, or just made up stuff or any of that. There's one cat behind the curtain scratching at the window, no out, like it wants to go out at night, and then here's a cat down here, he's just hanging out, steady. You're my boy, hanging out. So, yeah, that, yeah. And every night, Mom popping her head in the computer room to say goodnight, but it's not really to say goodnight, because she'll always end it on a sour note. She'll always end it with nagging, with criticizing, with bullshit, basically. Always bullshit, but she'll act like she's coming in to say goodnight, like she's doing something good. And after all that, when I would always basically hide from her and make myself as scarce as possible and be quiet as I possibly could. And when I couldn't get out of it, just kind of agree, smile and nod kind of shit. And she would always be like, well, you treat me like shit. And then I learned about DARVO, deny, attack, reverse. I forget what the other letters stand for, sorry. Well, she wouldn't always deny. What she would do is deflect. But then you would certainly attack, and she would reverse the victim and victimizer. And, yeah, so, and then she would, and after all this nonsense, mind you, I never initiated with her. I've walked away from her screaming at me over stuff that either never happened or stuff that was just, it wasn't my fault, or wasn't even things that were necessarily bad, or were honest mistakes that most people make, or stuff that wasn't even just not good. There's a spoon in the sink kind of stuff, right? And, you know, it got to a point where I'd be walking upstairs, I'd say something like, I'm not going to argue with you, and walk upstairs. And then if she finally wouldn't follow me, because she's old and lazy and might be now in too much pain to go upstairs, fine. That's her hell to live in. That's, you know, I can't worry about her pain. Like, I live in constant pain. And I complain about it to doctors, or I complain about it when it's relevant, like, hey, I'm having a bad pain day. Like, to my host, I might say, I'm having a bad pain day, I'll do dishes tomorrow. I'm having a bad pain day today, so I don't feel like going anywhere, but tomorrow I'm planning on going to the post office. Like today, I don't have a printer, so I went to the library to print some documents. Right, but outside of that, I don't, like, I just told you guys, like, fortunately today's a low pain day, but yesterday just happened to be a high pain day. It was what it was. And I did what I could, and it was fine. Or no, did I go? No, I went to the library today. I don't know what I did yesterday. I might have just stayed in the house. Oh, I know I did a lot of dishes yesterday. Yeah, I did a lot of dishes, and I didn't make dinner. Instead, I got, did I get Grubhub? Today, I made tuna macaroni and peas. But yeah, that's another thing I want to talk about, my memory, but yeah, so I'm feeling lots of feelings or no feelings at inappropriate times, and I'm having to take deep breaths, and I'm also at weird times feeling like I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be scared and I'm gonna be back home in this horrid situation, and it's gonna be, actually no, this is the rest of my life. I didn't escape, and it's gonna suck ass. Because since I escaped, I've only thought of suicide once, and it was very early on, and it was at the prospect, the risk of having to return home to that awful prison, where lack of public transit, lack of services and care for disabled people, and just the disabilities in general kept me imprisoned, with those awful people who weren't great people anyway, but they were getting worse and worse and worse. And QAnon, hi cats, one cat's annoying the other, and QAnon and just the far right push in general made my family worse. They took an abusive family, emotionally abusive, and made them far worse. It wasn't, I mean, they weren't kind people, they were abusive, but now they got meaner. So, getting back to the thing I wanted to discuss, with all the weird highs and emotional highs and lows, and also the weird lack of emotion, all at inappropriate times. The good news is I found other heathens, and I am in touch with and interacting with a really awesome kindred. I believe again, but I don't know if I believe again because I really believe, or if I believe again because I'm a fucking wreck and I'm setting myself up to like being a cult. You know, I don't know if it's kind of like I've seen all the red flags, and I've navigated all the red flags, so I know that's a red flag and that's a red flag, and so no, whatever. Or if I'm like much more susceptible to joining a cult, which no, I don't think this kindred is a cult, but I'm also wondering if, you know, like anytime anyone does anything nice for me, I'm like, is this love bombing, or are they just being normal, friendly people? They have their general way of doing things is new people eat first, and I think that's awesome, and I think it's hospitable, and I think that's nice, but there's always a voice in my head saying, is this love bombing? I know what love bombing is. Is this love bombing? And well, my family never love bombed me because they didn't have to, because I was unfortunately born there. It's like, well, super vulnerable baby, let's get started abusing it, you know. It, like, I have memories of being stubborn, or excuse me, of being called stubborn for not liking a green pair of pants. Or actually, it was not for not liking a green and white striped shirt that went with a green pair of pants. And this was the first time I lived in Indiana, which doesn't mean anything to you, the viewer, but I couldn't have been any older than 4 years old. I was probably 3 years old at the time, because I remember I was 4 years old in Texas, and then there's a whole rubber duck game where I picked up 4. And then my dad's like, "Hey, that's how old you are." He's, you know, teachable moment and all that. yay. But so I was probably 3 years old when my mother, because I did not like this green and white striped shirt and I didn't want to wear it, her attitude wasn't, I have a young child being a young child. Okay, well, this shirt is what's clean. How can I get my child to wear the shirt so my child can get dressed for the day or whatever? Cats, I swear. my cat's being chased. And it looks like they're gonna end up knocking shit over. And now, I don't know who's chasing who now. Okay, but, in saying something like, well, there's no other shirts clean, you don't want to run around, you don't want to get cold for not having a shirt on or whatever, because that's like more the approach my grandma would take. She would, she might say something, she might tell half-truths or whatever, like, if a kid says, well, I want ice cream, can we get ice cream? Then you say, we'll see, because at bottom they're not going to get ice cream, but you don't want to have the fight, so you say, we'll see, and then you know that they're 5, so they're going to forget about it after you've done your errands, something like that. Or say, well, I didn't say we would. I said we'll see, but now we can't. One of those. But Mom was like, you're stubborn. So basically what she's admitting, and no, someone's going to say, I want to be, yeah, fuck you, go eat a dick, get off my channel. And go seek out some therapy and learn how to be a human fucking being, because you were just triggered and it's a you problem. But her first go-to was to say, you're stubborn. So what she's admitting to is, after 3 years with me, you've become a stubborn person. I've made you a stubborn person. And if you're gonna say shit about responsibility of a 3-year-old in the face of I don't know, maybe she was 30 or maybe she was 25 or something, I don't know. I don't want to work out the years, I don't care to. If you're gonna say stuff about, well, you're responsible for... No, a little toddler isn't responsible, actually, for what their parent does to them. Fuck you. In fact, I am really tired of that mentality of, well, you need to learn responsibility. Telling, okay, when parents make mistakes, the parents aren't told, you need to learn to be responsible, you need to learn to be a better parent, you have the power, so you have most of the responsibility, and so you need to learn to do better. But all the responsibility is very often placed on the children, who are very often victims. You're responsible for whether or not your parents hit you. You're responsible for whether or not your parents insult you. You're responsible for whether or not your parents let you out of the house. You're responsible for, before they can even put 2 and 2 together, as far as, when I do this, I get punished. When I don't do this, I don't get punished. Even orienting parenting to punishment rather than teaching and helping is barbaric, but our culture does it. When a child throws a tantrum in a store, people are gonna think I'm a bad parent. And people will, because the child is being disobedient and inconvenient and loud, annoying, as opposed to, whoa, the child and the parent are both in a situation where they need help. The child's maybe tired. The child is just, they're not trained because they're like a fucking 5-year-old. And maybe they hadn't had their nap. Maybe mom hasn't had her nap. Or dad hasn't had his nap, you know. Maybe mom has like, she's under stress and she didn't have the time to, you know, before she went to brought the child to the store. All right, this is what we're gonna do. Here are our goals. Here's what I don't want you to do, and you know, so here's the routine. And then we can come home and I'll make you your favorite dinner or whatever. I'll make dinner, and then we can have a dessert, and you know, whatever it is. But she didn't have time to remind the child of the expectations and tell the child to, you know, hey, you know, this is a big trip and I need you to be a big girl or a big boy, and walk with mommy and be polite and kind, and keep your hands to yourself and stuff. I mean, whatever. Because children are stupid. They need to be taught. They need to be helped. They need to be guided. They don't need to be punished for doing human shit that humans do that they don't even know yet they're not even supposed to do in their pants in the store. I mean, like, they're still at an age where sometimes they forget that they're supposed to do that on a toilet, okay? And you're expecting them to be like, okay. But going back to my mother, and so her first go-to was, you're stubborn, I'm gonna judge you, I'm gonna make a moral judgment on you for just doing shit a normal human would do, especially at that age. Instead of using it as an opportunity to teach that clothes get dirty and we clean clothes. And that's not some big long lesson that has to be taught. That's just, all you do is say, but this is the shirt that's clean. Maybe teach why we wear clothes. I mean, not talking about all the weird shame shit. And again, not a big explanation. Well, we need to wear clothes. Why? So we don't get cold. Or maybe it's in the summer. And why? Well, because we live in a patriarchal capitalist society, heavily influenced by an Abrahamic God. No. But, but like, well, we're going into the store and you're gonna get cold. Well, you don't want to wear the old clothes, do you? Yeah, I do. Well, then you're gonna smell bad. You're gonna stink because you're gonna be dirty. Or if your clothes are wrinkled, people will think you look funny. And no, this is like, good parenting is hard. I mean, bad parenting is hard too, because you're gonna have to live with the results of your bad parenting for a bit. But good parenting is also hard. And don't expect me to have all the fucking answers. And if you expect me to have the answers to, like, I don't know, not hitting your fucking kids, then you're the fucking problem, because you're not taking time to go to a fucking parenting site. You're watching a trans refugee vlog. Like, what the fuck? So fuck you, eat a dick, go learn how to parent. There's all kinds of resources. Now, I will acknowledge that psychology today isn't necessarily going to have your answers for your situations and your challenges. And I understand there's lots of information, good, bad, and fucking weird. And there's going to be stuff that doesn't apply. But the internet is obviously at your fingertips, so what are you doing watching me? Stop hitting your fucking kids. It's like this. Why do you hit your kids? Well, they won't understand reason. Well, then they won't understand why you're hitting them either. Stop hitting your kids, asshole. Why are you hitting your kids? Well, the kids do understand reason. Then stop hitting your kids and explain the reason and explain why they're not supposed to be doing whatever they're doing. Stop hitting your kids, asshole. It's a real good meme. It doesn't cover every situation and every bullshit reason people think they need to hit their kids, and it doesn't cover how to get over the trauma and breaking habits and healing trauma from having been hit ourselves and all that shit. It's a fucking meme, but it's a pretty good fucking meme. Okay, so my point is, I don't know if I'm back to believing, if I'm back to my own weird brand of polytheism, because I really believe, or if it's because I'm really super highly emotional or not. I mean, and it's not always in a sensible, appropriate, and proportional way. And this isn't to say I'm always breaking down in tears or that I'm yelling at people or whatever. But I'm doing a lot of breathing so I don't do that. And while I'm not always walking around with my back muscles all tensed up or my stomach tied up in knots, because I'm thinking, well, my family they've said things that said they are willing and able to attack me again. And I know that when I'm down there, they're not going to be screaming at each other downstairs. They're not going to be screaming at each other. They're going to be screaming at me. Maybe not this second, but give it a couple of seconds. They'll ask me, are you going to make something for yourself for dinner or something? Normal question. I'll give a normal answer like, I don't know what I'm doing for dinner, or yeah, but I think it's going to be like a can of SpaghettiOs or something. Or, I don't know, are you going to get something from fast food? Because if you're going to do that, I'll just, give you $10 and ask you to get something for me too. Or any answer that I give, I would either get yelled at or insulted, or maybe or baited, like mom would try to bait me. And then my asshole brother would join in. Or if I don't answer, definitely I get yelled at, my asshole brother joins in. Yeah. So, yeah, and in that situation, whatever answer I would give, there is no safe answer. There is no end point when the abuse stops. Now, the abuse might stop temporarily, and if mom goes out of her way and does something nice, it's to manipulate me. It's to make me feel like I owe her. Very recent example, and it stuck out in my mind because it was so fucking obvious. She went to Burger King and said, "Hey, I want to buy you a meal." And I'm like, "Is there a specific reason?" "No, I just feel like doing something nice." "Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, could you get me a fish sandwich or whatever I ordered, Yeah, and then while we're eating, mom says, "I need you to vacuum the kitchen floor tomorrow." I mean, this isn't statecraft over here. But still, I did fall for it. Hook, line, and sinker. And I think the reason I did fall for it because it wasn't statecraft. It on its face, it just seemed like, I even asked about it and it just seems normal. Sometimes people just do something nice. Like at work, occasionally someone would be like, "Hey, I bought pizzas for everyone. So, on your break, have at it." And there'd be somebody who on some Tuesdays he would buy 4 or 5 pizzas, a couple of pepperonis, a couple of cheese. Yeah. and we'd go on a break, have at it. Thanks, appreciate it. And then, you know, a month later or something, you know, some Sunday morning when we were going in a little early for the meeting, somebody would get donuts or Chick-fil-A breakfast sandwiches, or, you know, something like that. It you know, give it a month, somebody else would be like, hey, I'm going to, I don't know, Schlotsky's Deli or whatever, you know, what do you want for lunch? And they would take down orders. And why? Because it was a nice thing to do, whether it was for the fellow employees or whether it was for the management doing something nice for all the workers. People do nice things for people occasionally sometimes. So yeah, this is getting really long. But this is kind of, I want to, instead of just saying, okay, here's mean shit my family did to me, I want to kind of explain this is the sort of thing that, one, abuse does to a person, but also there are some red flags here. Like if somebody is doing something nice for you and their whole mentality is, and I'm going to do something nice for you in order to get what I want from you, that is my end goal, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and it won't get better, so it'll just keep getting worse. Yeah, so, and sure, there are some people, like, I will say I can be real socially awkward. I can just, like, people can feel unappreciated by me because I just, I forget maybe to follow up with somebody or to do some social courtesy nice thing. And it's not that I don't care about the person, it's because I didn't pick up on some cue that this is what they wanted, or I'm just thinking about other things, or I'm thinking about something in a very mechanical way. I need to get this done, I need to get this done, I need to get this done. And meanwhile, there's a social thing that needs to get done, and I haven't intuited it, or I haven't had enough practice interacting with people such that I know this is what you do in order to make people feel appreciated or cared about, or like you're interested in interacting with them. And I'm realizing that some of my autistic friends have kind of described this sort of out of sight, out of mind thing. Not quite the same with me, but I'm kind of relating to it. But so sometimes, yeah, I'm acknowledging that sometimes, yeah, with people you have to explain. I've had some social situations, I've had some people have to explain social situations to me like I'm 5. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but it is what it is. But that doesn't mean that red flags are not red flags. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm a believer again, because I'm in a weird emotional state, and I think I'm probably getting better I think I'm getting worse in the immediate because I'm getting better in the long term, because I'm now in a spot where I'm able to feel things and not get negative repercussions for it. I can speak freely. My brother's a fucking jerk. It is what it is. He's a jerk. But he's done nice things for you. But he's your brother, and he has done nice things. Also, he's a jerk. But there's nobody that's going to try to say that I'm obligated to suppress my feelings and put up with it because he's family. Cool. Because familial obligations, well, that's great. Thanks. Tell him, do me a great big solid. You go and you tell him that he has no business being a jerk to me because he's my brother. Oh, you're not going to do that. And sure, if somebody's mother rages one time because their teenager was out 5 hours past curfew, it's justified to say, hey, she's your mom. She worries. That's not appropriate, but it's not abuse. It's an abuse, in my opinion, anyways. It's a constant. It's a constant thing that, it's a repeated thing. It's not just one time somebody fucks up because they are actually under a lot of stress, but it's not who they are as a person. People fuck up. But if you want to fucking tell me about family obligations, she's your mother, she worries. Or if you want to try to reframe the abuse, because, oh my God, our culture is made for abusers. Our culture supports abusers. Well, no, because if someone abuses their wife and they just call the cops. And how many cops are abusers? Look into the statistics. It's slightly over half in the United States in 2023. A lot. Tell me about situations where somebody's husband is abusing her, but the husband is a judge. Tell me about situations where men are being abused, or when lesbians or gays are being abused by a partner. Tell me about situations when a young boy is being abused by a mother, an aunt, a school teacher, nanny, that sort of thing. And so if it's physical abuse, well, you shouldn't let her do that to you. But you can't hit women. No, you shouldn't hit women. I just don't. Now, if it's self-defense and blocking isn't working, running away isn't working, if you have to do it in self-defense, do it. But especially boys, it's like, and if the abuse is sexual, no, you were lucky. You have to like it, and you're real lucky, and and it's a benefit to you because she was teaching you. Ooh. So don't fucking tell me that this culture does not enable and support abusers. It does. Yeah. So this is getting really fucking long. And emotional abuse well, that's not abuse. Financial abuse, oh no, they're just looking after you. Especially if it's like a husband on a wife, or maybe a woman to a man, or an older woman to a younger man. Oh, I'm just a cougar, and okay. Nothing wrong with cougars. Nothing wrong with people attracted to cougars. Cool. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, if there's an age disparity, there's probably a power disparity. Not always. You might have a 30-year-old and a 20-year-old with no power disparity. Cool, whatever. But I mean, yeah. But like, I can easily see like the financial abuse. Well, the person's taking care of you, and if you're the man on the end of an abusive, a financial abuser, the victim of a financial abuser, society gives you the responsibility of earning more and supporting the woman, and or getting out of the financial abuse, regardless of how now legally entangled you are, and how clever and manipulative she is, and how much you've been emotionally abused. Like, somehow man brains don't operate like other human brains for some reason. I don't know what goes on in the heads of people. It's patriarchy hurts men too, etc. And they don't take into account that a man may or may not have disabilities that may make it more difficult to sustain himself, much less 2 people and 3 people or more. Now, some people are into financial domination. That's different because that's consensual, and I'm down with informed, enthusiastic consent between adults. Children cannot consent. Get this through your head. Yes, even yes, even male children. Yes, even teenage male children. Yes, even when she's hot. Children cannot consent to sex. No. Children cannot consent to sexual situations. No. And by the way, regardless of your age, just because a person is stimulated and something feels good down here does not mean it feels good up here, and it does not mean that feeling good down here because it's stimulated, that does not mean that they're consenting up here. All right? This has gotten dark and serious. So yeah, this is a long vlog. So what I'm saying is I'm feeling weird about believing, and I would like to go into more detail, but that I don't want to reveal anyone else's identities. Nobody has done anything wrong or even questionable. But so I don't want to cast suspicions on anyone, period. It's not what I want to do. Also, I had associations with another pagan group, and because I was vulnerable, I was targeted by somebody to be weirdly manipulated. Now that I'm away from the situation, and I was likely to stop going to those meetings anyway. Now that I'm away from the situation, though, it's much easier for me to see, like, okay, no, I didn't feel safe there. I wasn't safe. And this individual kept switching gears in order to make me feel, I guess the word is dysregulated, but this person kept switching gears, and this person did once, they gave me some very horrible advice. I won't repeat it. That gets into a whole thing. And I took issue with it. And he ended up one, not apologizing and manipulating me, turning me in circles, such that I ended up apologizing to him for having misinterpreted what he said, and for having, and I didn't do this, by the way, and for having putting it on Facebook instead of going to him. I mean, I did put it on Facebook, but it wasn't in the sense of, I'm accusing you of doing a bad thing that's completely unjustified, and I'm totally like, I'm over here on Facebook dirtying your name when you haven't done anything to me. It was more like, I'm very confused about this advice. The situation is bad, and I don't like it, and I'm confused, and I'm angry, and this bad advice is bad, and I have no idea, and I'm putting it out to the hive mind because maybe I've totally misinterpreted it, but here's what it sounds like to me, and here's why it sounds really bad to me. And it's like, if you say something to me, I'm not expected to just keep it a secret. And I'm not expected to just come to you and only you with what's the word I'm looking for? with questions, comments, concerns about the nature of the advice. And it's kind of like, if I tell somebody, I don't know, fuck you, eat a dick, like, for whatever reason, and they go to somebody else and they say, hey, well, I'll say One-Eyed Heathen, like, and they said, One-Eyed Heathen came up to me and said, fuck you, eat a dick. How the hell am I going to complain if that's exactly what I did? That's not like it is talking behind my back in the sense that I may not know that they're saying that, but how in the hell can I expect anyone not to do that? Not to report, hey, this is what I said in real life. That I have no obligation to keep it between us when somebody treats me bad. Or in this case, maybe he didn't know that he was treating me bad. But it's not my obligation to try and make the case for not being told awful things to the person who told me awful things in order to earn the right to not be told awful things. And the advice was awful, along the lines of, it was victim blamey, and it was very much along the lines of not responsibility, but hyper responsibility, if that makes sense. Along the lines of, it wasn't like, well, if you have trouble getting dates, you may want to take an inventory of what you're doing and how you're presenting yourself. Are you taking the time to do your laundry and clean your clothes and bathe and groom? Okay, that's good. Are you on dating sites? Okay, so if you're on dating sites, how are you approaching people? Are you approaching people like, well, you have to have these exact dimensions and you have to have these exact particular interests and stuff? Because you can't be that demanding. And also you have to realize that people online on dating sites aren't necessarily going to be honest either, so you don't necessarily expect a lot from them. Are you trying to do social things in places you like tabletop role-playing at gaming shops or whatever, and my issues weren't taken into account, such as my mobility issues, etc., until after I'm like, well, hey, that advice isn't going to work for me because I have mobility issues and money issues. So saying, putting myself out there, that isn't going to fly. And I was given advice that had nothing to do with anything about what I said. All right, nothing. It would be like if I said, well, I go fishing in this good spot, but I'm not catching fish. And then somebody comes back with, well, if you want to kick a football further, here's what you got to do. No. I'm over here. I'm wanting to catch a lot of fish. I'm using this kind of bait. I'm casting like so. This kind of rod. I'm in this kind of boat. Whatever. Oh, okay. Well, I know a really good site that'll tell you how to do heart surgery. And then finally say, no, you're not listening, or you're not getting it. Okay. And then me going on Facebook saying, well, the advice that I got was along the lines of, well, it was almost like, well, if you just have a positive attitude, and at this point I might as well just repeat like the worst piece of advice that I got, because I was getting a lot of cliches, kind of, there's other fish in the sea, just put yourself out there, just be yourself kind of advice that's very cliche, it's there to shut people up, and while you're pretending to make yourself look like you're doing something kind just for listening to them, instead of saying something honest like, you know what, I'm sorry, dating is weird, dating is sometimes very difficult, sometimes socializing is difficult. I would say, you know what, sometimes, a lot of times, socializing is very difficult for me. I'm not a good person to come to. I care about you. I want you to have success. But I'm not the sort of person to come to for this advice. Good luck. Or instead of saying like, hey, I don't want to get in this conversation, or something like that, or like, I'm not equipped to give you advice, or I even just, hey, I don't like this topic. Let's talk about something else. You are bound and determined to make a fucking mess, aren't you, cat? But instead of doing that, they'll, oh, well, yes, the Carl Jung and collective unconsciousness and law of attraction and the secret and Sigmund Freud in the subconscious and P.F. Skinner behavioralism. And I read this article in Vogue that it was all about the 10 things women do that make men go wild. Anyway, but the bad piece of advice I got, what was it even? Now I'm forgetting. In order to find somebody, find a meaningful relationship, you have to not need people. Which, knowing human beings, you're going to have some human beings that are wired very differently from others, and that's fine. But most of us, self included, are not wired to not need people. We need people. If we didn't, why the fuck are you on the internet? Why are you doing social media? Why is social media so popular? We're social fucking animals. This is what we do. We socialize and we blow shit up and we drink. This is what we do. But seriously, we talk and we make things, basically. We talk and we make things. That's what we do. And drink and fuck. So my response was basically no, I don't think pretending not to need people or convincing myself I don't need people is a good idea. No. I know it's a catch-22. So yes, he knew it was a catch-22 because he told me he knew. And then he said, you got to actually not need people. And then on Facebook, I was like, this is the advice I got. This is my response. And that was the response he gave. And I don't like that response. It sounds really awful. Like, what do you guys think? And then I said, and I said, wow, it's a little like telling somebody to just pray the gay away. It's like telling somebody just not to be trans or whatever. Because human beings need people. This is who we are. This is what we do. We need people. So this is bad. What's going on here? I don't like this advice. And then he got into manipulating me into apologizing for taking what he said the wrong way, even though he knew. He sat there and he knew. He said, I know this is a catch-22, but... And that's really horrible advice. If you really turned your mind around enough so that you don't need people, which I don't know how a human being's going to do it, but maybe some have. I knew a guy who trained himself to pretty well turn off his emotions, and that's not healthy. I don't encourage that. We have emotions for a reason. But I imagine somebody out there somewhere can do it. One, it's not healthy, and two, if you do that, you're not going to attract people because of the way you're going to be acting. Because then you are going to be a manipulative son of a bitch, which explains a bit to you. But let's see. So yeah. But he didn't say He didn't say, no, actually, okay, I said this, but you misinterpreted it. Please let me explain what I actually meant. He didn't disavow what he said and like, hey, whoa, or he didn't say, hey, which it would be a lie if he disavowed it, but he didn't try. He said what he said. He knew what he said, and he didn't try to deny it. So he's obviously doesn't at least act like he has any problems with what he said. And he did not try to state what he meant in a different way. He didn't apologize for what he said. And he didn't apologize for saying something in a way that I interpreted it in a bad way. There's been many times where I like come off with an inappropriate joke, and then I realize other people are offended. And oh, I'm the only one that thought that was funny. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a sensitive topic. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. My bad. Because I'm not there to piss people off. I'm telling a joke because I want people to laugh, right? I want people to smile and be happy, all right? And then I realized, hey, people aren't happy and smiling from what I just said. Oh, it's like, and then he manipulated me into apologizing to him for not coming to him instead of going on Facebook, for being upset at what he said, when he said it to me in public in front of other people under no pretense of secrecy, or even discretion, like stuff that happens in ritual. That's a level of discretion. If somebody in ritual says, I eat too much. Hi, I eat too much. Yeah, I had, like, last night I had too much chips and salsa while watching a horror movie. I eat too much, But if somebody in ritual says that, there's no way in hell I'm going to go off and tell other people, you eat too much. This person said they eat too much. This person said, no. This person, somebody talked about having a past where they were abused. I'm not going to go around and say, this person had an abusive past. Whatever. It's discretion. And don't ever think for one. Okay, two things. Don't ever think for 1 minute that because somebody says something in ritual, it must be a secret. It's discretion. It's not secrecy. It's discretion. It's not secrecy. Want to hear it again? It's discretion. It's not secrecy. If you're typing a comment because you disagree, fuck you. You're wrong. The day is long. Somebody makes an oath to kill somebody. Don't keep that secret. Somebody says they're going to kill themselves. Don't keep that secret. Somebody says they're going to kick someone's shit in. That's not fucking secret. All right? Somebody using ritual as a context to bully and abuse somebody else. Like somebody within ritual continually insinuate, or even once insinuating that some other person is a complete schmuck or something, whatever it is. But if somebody using the context of ritual, say, in order to insult and criticize and insinuate and whatever, that's abusive, that's manipulative. Don't keep that shit secret. First you leave. But you're not under any obligation to keep the fact that a group leader was doing something like that. Okay? Anyway, but this was outside of ritual. So this doesn't even demand discretion, really. I mean, in a lot of situations, it'd be more polite not to go spreading stuff around. Like if somebody got off a bad breakup, it's more polite not to just go around saying, this person got off a bad breakup, this person got off a bad breakup, this person got off a bad breakup, and they were crying and whatever. I mean, it's nice to be discreet about things. It's polite, but there's not an obligation to do so. If I say, oh, well, I got into some conversation about ancient history and I told them about the digital Hammurabi channel and told him about an ancient fart joke that unfortunately doesn't seem to have a punchline or whatever, but jokes are formulated very differently. Americans, we have a setup and a punchline. That's the way we tend to formulate jokes. Whereas in Japan, it's more absurdist and self-deprecating, slapstick kind of. Yeah, that it's not. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, and then some jokes. Like I heard a Buddhist joke. I think its origins were in India, but I'm sure there's lots of Buddhist jokes around circles like this. Two monks in the middle of the street got in a knockdown, drag-out fight over who had let go of their ego the most. It doesn't have a punchline, but yeah, different formulas, different cultures. Swedish humor is very understated. It's they don't want to embarrass people, and the jokes are they're in a very deadpan kind of tone. At least to American sensibilities, it comes off as very deadpan. I mean, so different. I mean, there's different ways of telling jokes, but yeah, moving on. In that case, nobody's going to be obligated to, I don't know, worry if I'm going to be embarrassed because someone makes me look like a nerd or something, saying that I'm interested in ancient fart jokes. I'm interested in ancient fart jokes. I'm a nerd. I mean, if somebody is, I mean, and if I give advice, good or bad, if somebody repeats it to somebody else, someone repeats what I said to somebody else, because they want a second or third or fourth opinion, or they want the hive mind or whatever, cool. I'm not the boss of advice or something. I mean, I'm not the boss of other people, and I'm not the best advice giver, and I'm not the boss of advice giving, and whatever. I mean, I've passed around good advice that I've gotten, but I'll usually start it off by saying, look, I don't know if this applies to you, but here's a piece of advice that helped me. It may not apply to you, and it may seem real condescending because I'm explaining it to you like you're 5. But then that's because I needed it explained to me like I'm 5. And if it works for you, great. And if not, I'm sorry. I hope you find what does work for you. So yeah, and so the advice was not. He didn't try to transmit the advice in a different way. He didn't apologize for saying what he said, or for how what he said actually came off. Because sometimes I can mean X and it comes off as Y to somebody, and I will happily say, okay, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm not communicating well. Let me try again. Or I might say, well, oh, you misinterpreted me. Let me try to explain it differently. Because then it brings, like, maybe sure they misinterpreted it, but it brings the responsibility back to me. Like, okay, let me try and re-explain this. Because clearly something got mixed up. Let me see if I can do it again. And then you can tell me, you can give me feedback, and and then maybe I am wrong. Maybe, let's have a conversation, and as opposed to me telling you and expecting you to believe without question, and expecting you to keep what I say to you in confidence and never go get second or third opinions, and or take the advice and test it, and if and when it doesn't work, stop doing it and say, hey, this doesn't work. And you don't have to just come to me and say, hey, this doesn't work. You're free to say, this, I was given this advice, or one-eyed heathen gave me this advice and it didn't fucking work. It's yeah. So that was That was actually a red flag that I probably should have noticed was a red flag. But what happened, and I'm well across the country, and I think one of the reasons it happened to me is because I was one of the most vulnerable people, if not the most vulnerable people there, because I was open that I was being abused. I was open about being suicidal because I was being abused, but I wasn't talking about it all the time. I hardly ever said anything about it, and when I did, I was asked to not say anything about it because sensitivity levels and people have issues and triggers and shit. And I apologized because it's worth apologizing for. This is when I fuck up socializing, and I realized, oh yeah, I can see that, and then I stopped doing it. And I'm not, and that is actually a perfect example of a situation where, in fact, in ritual I mentioned this, but it's a perfect situation where just because something is done or said in ritual, it doesn't have to be kept secret. It doesn't have to be tiptoed around. It can be addressed, approached. Please don't talk about this again, because even though you're in a sacred space, a place where you can be honest, also consider that other people maybe have similar issues and might be really hurt for it emotionally. And this gets back to human beings doing human things, because we're human beings. This is how humans are wired. I do not get to say, but actually you shouldn't be because X, Y, and Z. Oh, humans are like this, and I don't want to hurt people. I'm sorry, I didn't know I was doing something that was potentially harmful. I'm not going to do it again. And I don't mind saying that I said it in ritual, and while I would not like somebody to repeat what I had said in ritual, if they do, I'm not the boss of them. Given the topic, hey, I'm not the boss of you. And it was given to, I was approached, actually I was approached, let's see, I was approached in an instant message, but I apologized in person, but people weren't around, like in the immediate area. So, and then it was explained to me again, but instead of taking it as like you're being patronizing or whatever, okay. I mean, because it was an important thing, okay. And I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, I said it in ritual space, so you can't talk to me about it, or you can't talk to other people about it that already heard it anyway, so why would I be upset for that? Now, that would be different than like making fun of me or something, but but this wasn't in ritual space, and lots of other people were sitting around and they heard it, and the hive mind confirmed what I was saying as far as, no, this is bad advice. No. And was not given in any sort of personal context, and there's no reason I should have kept that secret, especially because it was potentially very harmful advice. Especially so. And so that's an example, and I should have never returned. So, I can't, I can't undo it, and I can't wave a magic wand and change this person. If I could, I wouldn't. And I wouldn't even do it in the most patronizing way possible of, oh, I'm helping this person. Oh, I don't want to change this person. I'm just trying to get them to this. I'm just trying to take this person who's not is on some sort of lower level than some new age lobbity blabbity blue speak, and make them do what I want them to do to fit my vision of who I think they should be, but not quite as good as me, because I want to still be boss of things. But in a pseudoscientific blabbity blabbity blue speak, and then if I could really wave magic wands and change people, I wouldn't be messing with any of that. I still won't mess with any of that. So, this is a sort of, okay, can't waste time being bitter and angry. Living well is the best revenge. Wish him well. Hope he heals. And that's all I can do. And I thought, in my way of thinking, my mistaken way of thinking is, it was just one little, it was one thing. It was pretty bad, but it was one thing. Actually, two things, because he manipulated me into apologizing for not keeping what he said to me a secret? Not coming to him first? Like, what, do I need permission to say what you said to me in public? Do I have to keep awful things that you say to me secret? When you said it with, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 other people listening, in a room full of other people because of potluck, outside of any context or any discretion is even expected. No, I'm not under any obligation to keep any horrible things you say to me secret, or under any obligation to keep the advice you say to me secret, especially when it's bad advice, and to not test the advice with others to see if I can, to weigh the advice against what other people would say. Like, I can't navigate the dating world for the life of me. I can't do it to save my life. I suck at it. Like, oh my God. It took me years to realize that there was somebody once who was trying to have sex with me, and because basically she wasn't saying, hi, would you like to have sex? I didn't figure it out. It took me a few years when I suddenly realized, oh, that's why she kept bringing up that her and her boyfriend are polyamorous, kind of outside any context. Oh, because me, you're polyamorous. Oh, well, that's cool. And I think there's going to be a story going on. Oh, and as you know, as a polycool, we went to Dragon Con and it was awesome. Whatever it is, right? But she kept telling me, and to me, and I'm glad we didn't have sex. I was very attracted to her. I'm glad we did not have sex, because if you can't be direct about sex with another grown-ass adult, I don't feel comfortable having sex with you, because I don't know what you are and what you're not consenting to, and I also know you don't have the backbone to actually ask for sex. And like, not, and even just asking for sex is really fucking vague. Do you want oral? Do you want penetrative sex? Like, what kind of sex are you asking? Are you, hands can touch all over, and certain body parts can do lots of things with other body parts. We're human beings. We've figured out a lot of very creative things to do to ourselves and to each other. So if you can't say, I'm attracted to you and I would like for us to have sex, would you like to have sex? Or if you can't say, hey, I would like to try oral sex, or hey, I like the idea of getting a hand job, would you like to give me a hand job, or would you like me to give you a hand job? Or, hey, I'm attracted to you physically. What's the situation down there? Because I know you're trans. What's the situation down there? Because, I mean, please don't ask trans people like that, like, just on a normal conversation. Let the conversation get intimate first, please. If it's not good to say to your mom, it's not good to say to a person who's transgender because they're transgender. Please don't get that impression. But if she can't be direct about it, and I'm glad I didn't do anything with her, because would she be able to say no if I started doing something she didn't like, or if, you know, or if I asked to do something and she didn't give me a direct no, and I misinterpret it as it like go slow or go soft, or doing something like that, instead of actually no, it was a no, it just wasn't a clear no, and maybe I've done something really horrible to somebody. If you can't be direct about sex, I don't feel comfortable doing anything with you. I can't, like, it took me so long to realize this person who wasn't being direct was asking to engage in physical sexual things. Cool. And it's kind of funny that it took me years to suddenly have a realization when I was high. But I can't navigate the dating world to save my fucking life, and that's just proof of it. That's why I'm saying it. So, yeah. There's no fucking reason why I should have kept this conversation between him and I, because 1, it never was. 2, the advice should have been weighed with other people. 3, there's no expectation of secrecy or discretion or anything like that. And if there maybe have been on his part, but it wasn't communicated. He didn't say something like, I think it's best that all of us keep this conversation in confidence because it's dealing with some pretty emotional and serious stuff. By the way, some of it was, and this is for the other people who gave me bad advice, some of it, I think they weren't fully understanding what I was trying to communicate. But I think that's because, how do I say this? Not everyone there was neurotypical. I mean, I'm not neurotypical either, but not everyone there is neurotypical. So they're going to process information differently. And I never got anything from them like, oh, you shouldn't have repeated this or Now, there was one person whose advice wasn't good, but it wasn't like, how do I say this? It was along the lines of, well, go out and meet people. Okay, well, that wasn't good advice because she didn't take into account, like, the challenges that I have, but it wasn't bad advice, if that makes sense. It's a little bit like, you know, the whole, oh, there's other fish in the sea, or it's always darkest before the dawn. I'm quoting a Family Guy episode that's actually making fun of the stereotypical things you say to people who feel bad because of a breakup, right? But yeah, it was stuff like that. But yeah, but even that, I didn't get the idea that there was any sort of expectation of not telling anyone about the conversation. Secrecy is expectations of secrecy is another red flag. Especially when it comes to, like, real bad advice. Like, don't need, like, if you want to engage in a meaningful relationship with another human being don't need other human beings. It really is like telling a gay person to stop being gay. It really is like telling a trans person to stop being trans. It's like telling a hungry person to stop being hungry. It's not telling a hungry person, hey, I have some ideas for you that worked for me about not being hungry, since you want to resolve that, right? So I have some things that have worked for me. Would you like to hear or whatever? It's just, well, if you're hungry and you need food, your first step is to stop being hungry, or else you're not going to get food. Now, I know that's a catch-22, but it's true. And then they go off and tell somebody, or they go off and tell Facebook, hey, so I got this piece of advice when I, like, hey, I've been hungry for a while. I haven't eaten, and I'm frustrated for it. I'm because, people get hangry, but, like, I'm frustrated, I'm scared. I feel hungry. I really want food, and I want to know how to get food. And, you go online, you ask for advice, and there's a lot of different advice. So this one person told me that in order to get food, I needed to stop being hungry. And that really pisses me off. He said he knew it was a catch-22, but he said it's true anyway. And it sounds like really bad advice, and I know this person has had experiences with being hungry. This is a metaphor. This isn't like I'm trying to make a joke about his appearance or anything like that. I overeat, so no, I'm not, this isn't like some behind the back, roundabout, Harlem Globetrotters level backhanded flippity floppity insult. It's a metaphor. So this guy tells me that in order to get food to solve my hunger, I just have to stop being hungry. And he said he knew it's a catch-22, and he knew it's hard, but also that it's true. I'm angry at this advice. I'm upset with it. It sounds like bad advice to me. It sounds a little like telling gay people not to be gay or something. It's weird. I don't know what to do with this advice. It doesn't sound like good advice to me. What do you guys think? And a couple of comments come in. Well, this is bad advice, or no, here's my take on, here's my advice, or well, maybe, maybe it's more of a confidence issue, or hey, don't worry about this guy's advice. Everyone has opinions are like assholes, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Get different responses like that. And then I get manipulated into apologizing for not telling people the advice about the bad advice I got. And it's stuff like this. It's not just the abuse that I got from my family. It's stuff like this that makes me wonder, is believing anything, I don't like the word supernatural, because if it's found to be real, and once it becomes scientifically understood, it becomes natural. Nothing is actually supernatural. The supernatural doesn't exist. It's got me wondering if I go back to being a polytheist, am I putting myself in danger of more of this shit? If I join a group, am I more in danger of this shit? Am I not likely to see red flags because of this shit? Or am I to use another metaphor, is my red flag detection set way too high, so being allowed to eat first, or being encouraged to eat first, looks like love bombing. Maybe it's just someone being kind, relax, chill. Or somebody being kind enough to drive me from, hey, if you get to this point, I'll drive you that distance to the location. Is that just being kind? It is being kind, but is that just being kind? Or is that love bombing? When somebody says something to me like, actually, let's see. Let's say I, last potluck I brought a thing of cookies that I just bought. I didn't make anything. But let's say someone were to say something like, hey, next potluck, I'd really like you to make something. Is that on its face just they'd like to taste my cookie? Cool. Or is it some weird insult? Or are they trying to bait me into a fight? Are they doing this weird, snippy social thing where they're in some sort of social competition with me to look like the better person? And people do that at gatherings. And if you don't believe me, go to a church potluck, go to a Baptist fried chicken and corn on the cob, barbecue type, go to a Baptist barbecue with all the sweet little old church ladies and hear what they say behind other people's backs. Ooh. And hear the conversation it's so polite about being so fucking rude. Oh my God, it is. Southerners have, especially the ladies, have mastered being real polite about being rude as hell. Backhanded compliments, behind the back talk, compliments that insinuate things that you, the target of the insinuation, know what they're saying, but nobody else does. So the person doing it looks real nice, right? Like the sweetest person in the room that ever was, but you know that they're insinuating that you are a lazy bitch. Or you know that they're insinuating that you are a hussy, and everybody else knows you're a hussy. and they're trying to get you to react and bait you into doing something overt that's completely inappropriate. and you're gonna say, but these people aren't like those kind of people. No, they're not. Unless they are and they're hiding it. And you might think, well, you're being paranoid. And maybe I am being paranoid. But also, have you met my mother? If I should ever be in the same room with her, heaven forbid, I will introduce you. And in public, she was very sociable. She was very kind. And she was kind to me in public, but not in public. Because abusers know how to look like the good guys in the situation. Abusers know how to make it look like in front of other people that you're stubborn, that you're crazy, that you're the problem, you're angry, you're paranoid, you're judgmental. You're the problem. Abusers know how to make their victims look like the victimizers. Whether it's overt, just going around lying about you behind your back, or whether it is you're in the same room and they're saying things that insinuate things about you that it calls back to other bad things they've actually said about you in private, and calls back to conflicts and fights that they yelled and pushed and intimidated and threatened and withheld and did all the fucking things until, God damn it, you caved because of the constant horrible treatment of you. but they'll bring it up again, and that you finally folded and caved, right? And they'll bring it up in public, but in a way that the person listening, they don't know the whole story. They only know that you were stubborn or something, but the abuser isn't even calling you stubborn or insinuating that you're stubborn. They're just saying something that you know what it means. You know you lost a fight. You know, and you're being reminded that you've capitulated. You've lost. And I do apologize for that. I am going to have to stop this recording now. But to finish what I was saying, but the other person just thinks mom is being super nice and super gracious and just wants nothing but the best for you, huh? Abusers are real good at that. And mom ticks off some of the signs of being a narcissist, but I can't say that she is a narcissist because I'm not qualified. And were I qualified, I wouldn't say, because that would be unethical. Anyway, so this is why I am afraid to return to religion. Also, I cannot verify it with, experimentation and taking the results to other people and having it verified, having the experiment repeated and verified. There is no verifiable evidence. There's no externally verifiable evidence that what I'm believing is true. So I don't know if I'm back to polytheism because my intuitions and feelings and experiences are telling me true information, or if I've gone back to believing for just because I'm an emotional clusterfuck right now, and I don't know if believing again puts me in danger. Or actually, if I've just found a good group of people that are 10 times better than one of the groups down in Georgia that I'll phrase it this way. 10 times better than an individual in one of the groups in Georgia. Because I'm not judging the whole group. Because there were some good people there. So, yeah. Most of the people there were good people. All right. I'm judging the one. Just the one. And he can judge me back. And if somebody wants to tell me to slow my roll, I will listen. And I will certainly take it under consideration. Of course. And from there, I'll leave him to his business, because there is absolutely no reason I need to do anything in that direction. And that's it. And I want it. I hope he heals, not in a patronizing, condescending way. He's a human being. I'm a human being. I hope he heals. Hell, if he identifies as something non-human, he exists. He's a conscious being. I'm a conscious being. So he's one of me. I'm one of him. We're conscious beings. I want him to heal and be well. That's it. And then it's more like then living well is the best revenge kind of a thing. I'm not touching it. It's not my business. That's it. It's not my business anymore. It's done. Because if somebody else is affected by him, please, you can come to me and talk. I am a safe person. But being safe, if you want nothing to do with me, that's perfectly fine too. That's okay. I honor that. So, yeah. So not only does the situation with my mom and having escaped, my brother too, having escaped my family of origin, have me wondering, hey, am I putting myself in danger here? But also this other individual has me wondering that too. Nonetheless, I will continue doing my art, and I will continue doing my art, my weird art. I guess I can call it my weird. I'll continue doing my art, and I'll just like my fun art, I'll continue doing my weird art, which is also fun, but it's more serious. My weird art, yeah, we'll call it that. No matter what happens. So, do what I did and follow the Raven's Rook.